and this is Arcane Mark. Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Arcane Mark. Today we're going to be talking about setting the theme for your one-shot adventures. Before we get started with that, I just want to point out for our live viewers that we are not going to have an episode poll today because we did more polls than we needed in the past. So we already know that Tuesday's episode is going to be on prophecies and divinations, and next Saturday will be Build a Deity Workshop. Polls will resume as normal on Tuesday. So as for our actual topic, we're talking about setting themes in particular for one-shot adventures as opposed to themes for entire giant campaigns.
Right. When you have a whole campaign to set your theme, you have a lot of time to explore that. You can have multiple stories and arcs that are underlying the theme. You can have secret themes that you didn't even talk about at first that are sort of revealed throughout play, or even emergent themes that happen because of the choices that the players make with their characters that you didn't even expect as the GM when you were starting out. With a one-shot adventure, not necessarily that easy to do. Generally, when you're running a one-shot adventure, when you're writing a one-shot adventure for a theme, you need to be very on point to make sure you get across that theme, whether it's a holiday special or just an adventure that you want to talk about the theme of betrayal or the theme of horror or something else like that.
And getting that theme across, at least from what the players see from that perspective, is going to start with letting the players know what the intended theme is. Like, holiday specials aren't exactly secret about what they are. They're going to be like, the Halloween whatever, or the Christmas whatever, or this kind of thing. They're going to be very direct about it. Or if you have a theme that's about being like a spooky story, or like a one shot that's like, this is about being like a political thriller or what have you, they're going to tell you what it says on the tin so that players are going to be approaching it with the right mindset.
That's right. Don't make it a secret. Let your players know what you're trying to do. Now, whether you accomplish it or not, they might at least think that you're heading in the right direction if they know what it is. Now, in terms of that, for one-shot adventures, you may already be thinking about whether or not you want to use pre-generated characters or have the players make the characters. For a themed one-shot, you want to be thinking about that twice. It's probably more likely that you want pre-generated characters who will match the themes that you're trying to get across and have built-in hooks. If you don't, then at least work carefully with your players to make sure that you're not trying to do, like a political thriller and you wind up with, like, Clown Shoes McFartface, who is a just complete joke character who comes into the tense political negotiations and, like, is just honking a horn instead of speaking and making squeaky sounds with their shoes.
And there's also a lot of space between just kind of talking to players a little bit about it and full-on pre-gens. You could have something where it's like, this role is going to be like some kind of defender martial character who has like kind of these aspects to their backstory or what have you, and then maybe the player creates the builds from there.
Right.
But you make sure those key points are in place, whatever you feel that's necessary for telling that story.
So you've chosen the theme and you're working on the characters.
But before you really can work on the characters, you need to know what game system you're going to use.
But you might have actually worked on some of the characters' storylines before that.
That's true.
You might have. But now, is the one-shot going to be in your usual game system? Which it might. But one-shots are also a chance to use a different game system. And you're setting yourself up for success if you make sure you pick a game system that's working with you. Because the goals of the game system are together with the theme. And in fact, that the game system incentivizes players to play to that theme. For example, there are some kind of themes that D&D or Pathfinder do not incentivize players to play towards. Like that kind of idea of like, okay, the creatures are so dangerous, we just don't even want to encounter them at all. We're running around just trying to gather information that is more known for games like Call of Cthulhu. It's not as easy to do that in D&D or Pathfinder. I mean, sure, you could just throw a monster that's way higher level than the PCs, but even then it doesn't always really play to the system's strengths. So figure out the theme that you want and see if you have a RPG that maybe you haven't played with your group yet, that would fit well with that theme. And maybe the answer is that you do, but that your players just really aren't comfortable with that and that they'd rather play the old reliable. And that's okay too.
Yeah. You might also wind up going about this from the other direction if you say, hey, I want to try out an RPG that I haven't done before. What's a theme that looks like this game system does really well? And then use that themed adventure as a way to introduce the new game.
That's right. Or, you know what? You might just be like, I want to do this theme, and I want to do it in this system. I know it's not the best synergy. What can I do? And the answer is, you can. You're going to have to not necessarily work with the system. You may be at cross odds with the system a little bit while you're working on it, but it can be done. You're just sort of taking the DC for your check that you're rolling on crafting the adventure is a little bit harder, or in D&D, maybe you're rolling with disadvantage instead of advantage.
Yeah, and then the sense there would be that if you are, in some cases, working against the system, you'll want to make sure that the players know that as part of the theme, where it's like, where I'm setting this existential horror thing in, like a Pathfinder or a D&D type game where the game tends to assume that you win a little bit more. So we're going to have, so the encounters are going to be harder, but certain other things are going to be true about this. Or we're going to have more like chase scenes or victory point things rather than direct combat.
Or it might just turn out to be literally impossible to do the thing that you want. Like, if you're like, I want to do an adventure that is gritty adventure where the PCs go out onto a street and a dying, starving beggar with no weapons who's, neither of their arms work, still has a 75% chance to kill them. I'm going to do it in Mythender, the RPG system where you can kill deities and you have an almost 100% chance to kill the deities. The question is if you get corrupted while doing it. And it would be like, okay, maybe this is just literally impossible to do.
Yes.
So you should figure out if it's literally impossible, but it generally isn't. And generally, there's something you can do to make it work. It's just a question of how hard it will be. So you've selected your game system. You figured out about the characters. You even know what they are, either because you built them or because the players have shown some of the pieces of the characters to you. How are you going to get across this theme? Especially if it's got some constraints on it, like maybe a holiday-style theme. So why don't we take a look at a sort of a proof of concept of doing that. Reaping What We Sow by Linda Zayas Palmer is a adventure for Pathfinder Society that's based on a Halloween theme, but is also built to allow you to sort of do a Scooby-Doo style kids Halloween or a really creepy, this is freaking me out Halloween.
Yeah, and one of the things with that was that I knew when writing the, hey, you could do this either way, that these kind of systems, like Pathfinder's not the best for horror adventures in general because of the relative power of the PCs compared to the threats that they face. So it tends to be more about like ambience and atmosphere, whereas it can be easier to do like kind of more comedic horror in Pathfinder. So that was one of the things I was thinking about is like, you know, suggest as well as you can, but it's still gonna be the expectation that the PCs are gonna win. So one of the things that I look at too is that with those is that with one-shots with a specific theme, you're often going to be drawing upon tropes and ideas that come from the real world that may or may not exist or may exist in a different form within the setting of the game.
That's right. So there are going to be some minor spoilers for an adventure that's in a game system that is one game system or even 1.5 before the currently active one in Pathfinder. So just bear with us. You probably weren't going to play that adventure after this anyway.
So looking at the Halloween theme there, I was thinking about pumpkin carving and like gourd leshies and that kind of thing, and how that could help get across the Halloween theme. But I didn't want to literally be like, they have a holiday called Halloween. They go around trick-or-treating and things like that. So I was like, okay, well, this gourd carving thing could be part of some kind of like a harvesty festival. And then maybe it's related in this local tradition to like a devotion to Shellen, goddess of art and beauty and love, because then the idea is like, oh, everyone's expressing themselves in this way, and then that's something that becomes corrupted. So it takes the familiar pumpkin carving spooky adventure, but it also makes it fit into the world so it doesn't jar at the fourth wall.
That's right. And so one of the ways to incorporate this into the one-shot is that Linda put in a stage earlier on where the villagers are decorating and literally carving pumpkins, and they ask the PCs to join in, and they can describe what pumpkins they carved and roll a check to see how well they did.
Every time I've done it, I've handed out paper and pencils around the table so people can draw.
You can give them pencils or crayons or colored pencils to actually draw out the pumpkins. And that makes it an actual activity the kids could join into if they were playing. I think the adventure literally mentions that you can hand it out to have people draw them. And then near the end of the adventure, where the bad guys are like possessing the pumpkins and sending them out to attack people, the PC's pumpkins that they carved attack them.
It's like, you're being attacked by this one. It's like, no, my pumpkin, you betrayed me.
So, like, imagine if you're running this on, like, online, on Foundry or something like that, and you have the players, like, use paint to decorate their pumpkin and then send you the files, and then you put them on the tokens of the pumpkins that are attacking them, and then they get attacked by the pumpkin that they carved. Like, no, it's my pumpkin. So it's sort of like a Chekhov's gun with the decoration, where it wasn't just an arbitrary busy work to make it feel like it was the holiday, because it did get drawn back in and was used later on in the adventure. And that's something that's important, because you actually could put in arbitrary things that are just make it feel like the theme or the holiday that aren't really related to the adventure if you want. Some people like it anyway, because they'll be like, oh yeah, that's that thing with the theme or the holiday or whatever we're doing. But if it does then tie in an unexpected way, it makes it feel more like it's connected and like you know what you're doing.
Yeah, because it could be some, a lot of times you might see something where it's, you're doing a one-shot that's a heist story, and then you throw in, like, some reference to Ocean's 11 or whatever somewhere, and then players who've seen the movie can be like, oh, haha, yeah, that's a reference. But if then that comes back around in another interesting way, it's always fun.
Exactly. Or you could do something like with a heist, even if you're playing in a game system that doesn't support flashbacks as much as some heist systems that just force you to use flashbacks, like Leverage RPG or Blades in the Dark. You could still present certain elements in the game as flashbacks, even if they didn't have huge mechanical heft to them, where you just explain something as a flashback, even though, like, you didn't technically have to. Where, like, even, like, the introduction to the one-shot could be, like, something that starts in media res and then goes to a flashback of when they were planning it. It's like, as, the thief is crawling through the duct to open up the door as the mage is, like, taking down one of the magical traps, and the fighter is calling out, hey, the guards are coming this way, and from that, you flash back to the planning scene where you have this big map of the place, and then you're looking at the information.
And then the guard is like, do you smell something? And then Clowny McFartface or whatever comes in and is like, eh, and then you're like, damn it.
Major Lock!
Oh no, please don't use that voice.
Okay.
Oh, my ears.
It could be the clown.
No. Character rejected.
Character rejected? Oh no! But Math Guy Dave spent so long and hard to work on that clown.
I'm sorry, Math Guy. I just can't with that voice. You can play the character. It's just Mark's incarnations.
There we go. What if it was more like the Joker?
Yeah, well, I mean, that could fit, maybe. Anyway,
Well, Batman, it's time for more adventures in the crawling through the dots.
But I mean, if you're doing a flashback there, then the players can be invested in sort of like, okay, how did we get there? What were the steps along?
Or they could even, having heard what the Media Race problem was, be like, okay, so we know the guards are going to come along this corridor. That's why we're going to set up a magical trap that's going to capture them in there and then start shooting out snakes at them. And then you go back into the scene of where they're at, and then the fighter's like, they're coming this way, and the wizard says, don't worry, the snakes are coming. And then the snakes come out of the walls and attack. So, at that point, apparently Mad Guy Dave said that his voice sounds just like mine on Clowny. So there you go. So, at that point, basically, you can just sort of shoe in some of the theme by just sort of using tropes and just be very clear about it. You do not need to worry about, oh, this is a little bit too direct. I should be more subtle. It's a one-shot.
It should be direct.
It can be as direct as those pumpkin carving things that Linda talked about, or doing a flashback. Make it really evident, because your players have only this one shot to get into it.
Yeah.
They're going to remember it if it's very over the top and evident, and if it's just sort of subtle and you're trying to carry it throughout, like maybe you have one player who afterwards will be like, I would like to write a dissertation about this one shot in which I reveal the subtle nuance that the Game Master has provided us, which tells us a tale of ennui and anomie, the dissociation of the people within this village towards society, and the breakdown that led to the inevitable negative consequences.
You see, when they described her as wearing a maroon and silver scarf, this color combination is a reference to the famous 1842. Yeah. Another thing too that is kind of a similar vein with that is considering where you played into the tropes versus subverting the tropes. You generally are going to probably want to play more into the tropes and then maybe subvert a little, as opposed to completely just saying, yes, this is the adventure that doesn't have any of the themes that anyone expects. Or any of the concepts or tropes associated with the theme that anyone expects, rather.
That's right. So basically, just be blatant in your one shot. People will be okay with it. It's a one shot. It's trying to get across the theme. No one's going to be like, you beat us too over the head with a hammer on this one. And instead, it'll make it more memorable. It'll help people get in. It will allow them to realize they can just really get into the theme too, and that they don't have to worry about being like, well, my character sheet says this about me, so I will just sort of subtly hint at it throughout the adventure.
No. It's kind of like what we talked about with in our organized play episode, about how organized play characters, particularly when they are often played with a variety of groups and don't have like that long arc with the same people, often work best when they have like really snappy hooks to them, whether it's like catchphrases or behaviors or something that's flashy and like very extra in some way. Where, that they don't necessarily have to be like super charismatic and out there. They could be like, yes, they're very, they're super into whatever their hobby is, and you can see that, or like or whatever else have you, but you kind of want to keep the same thing in mind with your NPCs in the one shot. Like, you don't really want your NPCs to be generic. You want them to stand out.
That's right. So also, you want to make sure that you are not sending mixed messages with your one shot. You don't have enough time for that. Math Guy Dave tells a story about how Math Guy's GM currently hates them because he's trying to run a serious campaign, and the PCs decide to work for Lord Shit-Ton, and Math Guy Dave made art of the palace as a giant toilet with a moat of brown water. And look, that's partially on Math Guy Dave for doing that, but also it's partially on the GM for having a character named Lord Shit-Ton and trying to make a serious campaign. Like, it's not necessarily the player's fault if one of your characters is named Lord Shit-Ton, and maybe it's pronounced shit-on.
Yeah.
It's okay, that's
Shit-on?
That's almost equally bad, okay? So, be careful about names in general,
absolutely.
especially in a themed one-shot. If they're just very on the nose for the theme, that's okay, right? You can literally have a character named Jack Skellington or something like that, or Jack O'Lantern, and it'll be fine.
You can name your vampire like Malice Sanguine and like whatever, right? Unless the story is supposed to be a story where nobody knows there's a vampire, then it's going to be difficult for people.
Yes, but if you call your vampire like I don't know, Emo McSquickalot, and then you want it to be a serious, scary vampire thing, people are just going to make fun of Emo McSquickalot as a vampire. They're going to be like, oh, does he have a brooding backstory? And it will suck the tension out of it. So you need to make sure not only...
the blood.
Yes, like the blood of his victims. You need to make sure you not only have a tight theme that you are kind of going really strong on, maybe even over the top, but you need to make darn sure that you don't put something in that just completely jars off of that. Now, that doesn't mean that your horror adventure has to be absolutely horrifying tension all the way. as we've mentioned in many previous episodes, a little bit of levity breaks up the horror, and you'll generally see some humor in any horror movie or play or anything like that to kind of create that effect. Because if you just get everybody just so deadened to horror because it's all horror, then it's like people who live in a city that's being shot at by rockets, where at first that's really scary, and then eventually, oh, we're being shot at by rockets again. We're always being shot at by rockets, or any other thing like that. So that's not to say you can't intentionally shift off the mood, but if you are just throwing in something where the theme or the name or something like that just distracts, it is not an intentional way of changing up the mood, that's going to mess you up in a one-shot.
Yeah, for sure. You're going to want to be very intentional about when you subvert tropes, when you subvert expectations, or when you change the mood.
That's right. And Kojo mentioned in chat you don't have an option for the big reveal or plot twist in a one-shot. So, sort of. You probably can do a big reveal or plot twist in a one-shot one time in the one-shot. I don't mean one time over the course of your life. But one time per one-shot, you probably can do it. But you still need to be careful about it and make sure that the adventure makes sense before you get to the big reveal.
And after, and that it's consistent.
Where it's like if you're doing a winter holiday thing with all sorts of themes based on various winter holidays and gift giving, and then the reveal is that the gifts were made with like the entrails of the human villagers, and that the gift-giving elf, jolly gift-giving elf was actually like a demon who was sacrificing everyone to create hell on earth. And you told everyone it was a friendly holiday gift thing.
Then they're going to be like, that's
they're going to be like, what the heck was this plot twist?
Yeah.
On the other hand,
if you have a thing where like where you told them it was going to be like a creepy thing, and like there were some hints all along that things weren't quite right, and then they were trying to figure out what was wrong, and then that was revealed.
That could work. But you see, the problem is if you tell them that it is the holiday theme and it's some other random thing, or it doesn't have to be holiday, right? You can tell them it's like comedy themed slice of life and actually there's a serial killer, like that's an issue. But if it's the other way around where it's like I told everyone it was going to be some kind of a brutal war drama, and then it turned out that it was all about winter holidays, and like everyone just gave gifts, and at the end they learned about the spirit of friendship, like that is also a weird twist.
So you'd want the twist for a one-shot to not be something that fundamentally changes the genre or the feel of the game.
Absolutely. And it should be the case that whatever you said the theme of the game was to your players is not a lie and is true, and therefore all of the sort of very blatant theming that you did throughout the adventure is true, even with the twist. So, for example, if you're doing like some kind of intrigue adventure, and you tell them it's an intrigue adventure, they're doing an intrigue adventure or a heist or something like that, and then at the end, it turns out their client betrayed them, and that there's a big plot twist. That's fine, because you know what? Your client betrays you like almost half the time in those kind of stories. I mean, like literally the first episode of Leverage, their client betrayed them. Spoilers for the first episode of Leverage. He betrays them like right away. But the point is, that's just very cliche for that. Whereas when when your theme is something that is not about that kind of betrayal, then that might not be the kind of twist that you wanted to make. Like, you could still make a different twist. So, for instance, if it was more of like you wanted the theme to be like a sort of a kid-friendly, friendship is magic kind of thing, and the twist was that they're murdering their friends, that would not be good.
Yeah.
Whereas if the twist was that the source of magic was from like rainbow stars that fell from the sky long ago, and that the ancient fairies who created those stars have been awakened or something like that, it's like, okay, that could be the twist. It doesn't like negate the entire theme that you've been doing up until that point.
Nor does it negate the PC's deeds up to that point.
Right, because you could be like, well, I said friendship was magic because I ate my friends and then I gained magic. And it's like, no. You may be, like, technically by your words correct, but it's
don't rules lawyer that.
Don't try to rules lawyer the theme on there, like with the old 8-bit theater where Black Mage is like, love powers my Hadoken because I destroy the love in the world to shoot out my Hadoken. So basically, don't gotta get cute with the theme, like, by being like, well, technically it was the thing I said. The theme that your players think that they're playing for the one-shot should be the theme of the one-shot, even if it does have a twist or some kind of a strange reveal at the end.
Yeah. And those kinds of things where it seems to be fitting with a theme and then it, like, goes completely off of that work better for the long-form campaign where it's not, like, the one thing that you sat down to play, but is instead, like, a subversion of expectations.
Yes. I have a one-shot, for example, that's in a sort of very light RPG that doesn't really have a lot. It doesn't really have roles. You just kind of do what you're going to do. It's almost sort of like an escape room style thing where your characters start off and they have no memories. And there is a big reveal at the end if you make it to the end where you learn about what happened and why you were trapped in this place. But you know at the beginning because the description of the adventure is you're trapped in a dark room with
And
three
you don't
other
remember
people
what's
and you
going
don't
on.
remember what's going on. And
Yeah.
it's about that realization of what happened. And so, like, you kind of know that either there's going to be a big reveal or that you will just end in failure having not discovered that big reveal. Like, that's sort of the theme of the adventure already. Players come in expecting, I'm going to learn more because the name of this adventure is Anagnorisis, which is like the dramatic realization. So hopefully one of those will happen. That's literally the name of the adventure. So basically, all that being said is give the players what they expect to have in a one-shot. In a long-term campaign, you are doing like a menu of all sorts of different dishes that you're creating for them. But when it comes to a one-shot, it's more like they went to a certain restaurant. You know, they went to their favorite pizza place because you said, let's get pizza from that place.
And you want to give them pizza.
And you didn't want to, like, order them, like, the salad from there after you said, we're going to get pizza from your favorite pizza place.
Yeah.
But you're like, well, technically, the salad was at that pizza place.
No. You don't want to do that.
So, with this advice, you should be able to run a really killer one-shot adventure, maybe not literally killing their characters, that stays on theme, whether it is a holiday special, whether it is just a way to explore a new RPG, or whether the new RPG is a means to an end to explore a theme you've always wanted to tell but had trouble with your group's main RPG. And hopefully, by putting in these strong and memorable hooks, the players will remember it for a long time. They'll talk about it. It might make them excited to play longer form content with that theme or that RPG later on, using it as sort of a teaser of like, here's what this could be. And they might be like, okay, even like 6 months later, be like, I remember when we did that and tell stories about it. Maybe we could play another game that's like this at some point too.
Whether it's another game in the game system or another one-shot or another thing with that theme. One-shots can be a really great way to try on themes as well and see what kinds of things your players enjoy that might be outside of what you typically run.
That's right. So, all that being said, that's the secret to setting a theme for one-shot adventure. You don't have time to be cute. You don't have time to be super subtle. Make sure you get that theme out there, even by telling them what the theme is in advance and then pressing that theme on throughout the adventure. There's almost no amount that is too much when it comes to the theme. Even if you do go a little bit over the edge to too much, people might just laugh and find it humorous that you've gone to that point. And it could still work out.
And the characters can really blend into that too. So one thing we had said earlier too is making sure that your characters fit the theme either by building those pre-gens or working with the players to make sure that it's all going to go smoothly.
That's right.
And you all have buy-in to the concept.
All right, everyone.
right.
So
Thank you for
please
watching.
like and subscribe. And if you are really excited and you want to support us, you can join too. We do not have a survey because we're going to do prophecies and divinations on Tuesday. And on Saturday, we're building a deity. So join us if you're interested in those topics. Don't join us if you're not interested in those topics. Maybe join us later on.
When you see something that is interesting.
We'll see you next time. Have a great weekend, everyone, and good gaming to you all.
Bye!
Bye!